Hi, my name is Peter Bringe, pastor at Covenant Family Church. The fourth commandment out of the 10 commandments, I think, is one that takes a little more effort for us today to figure out how to observe it, just because we don't have the habits built in our way of life as much in keeping this commandment. And that is the commandment to remember the Sabbath day and to keep it holy. In an earlier video, I talked about how the first day of the week is the Christian Sabbath, the Lord's Day for Christ's resurrection. I'm not going to focus so much here on proving that point as to how are we supposed to keep that day? How are we supposed to keep it holy? And that is the main point, that we are to keep it holy, set apart from the other days. We have 6 days to get our work done, to go about our callings, not just the job that we're paid for, but our callings in general, our own business, that we can get that done. Even enjoy the good gifts that God has given us, sports and recreation. But there's a day that ought to be set apart from normal use, unto sacred use, and to rest. That we are to stop working. That we are to remember that we are not slaves, that we don't have to squeeze every bit of time to get what we need, but that we have a Father who looks out for us and can provide for our needs. That we have this rest, and we ought to give rest to others. It's why we have one day. We don't get to pick our own days, because we're supposed to rest with others, give rest to our households, give rest to others in our community as much as we can. And to not abuse that rest. It's not a rest intended for sports or to get a little extra work done around the home, but rather it is a rest for sacred use, for the worship of God, and attendance upon the means of grace, communion with God. Particularly, it's a day of public worship with God's people, a holy convocation. We see that in the Old Testament, Leviticus 23, and several places in the New Testament where they gather to hear the preaching of the Word and to partake of the Lord's Supper together. Just as we rest together, we worship together on the same day and encourage one another, exhort one another, celebrate together on this festival, this holiday, this holy day, where we remember that redemption was accomplished. And we spend even the times that we're not in formal worship trying to sanctify the whole day, spending time meditating on God's works and Word, studying His Word, and responding in prayer, in singing. I think those who only sing in the congregation, haven't learned how to sing on their own or as a family, are hindered in really making the best use of the Lord's Day. It's a great thing to do, a joyful thing to do. And to treat this day and to value it. As Isaiah 58 says, to call it a delight and to realize the great benefit we have been given, an enforced use of our time to rest from the normal labors that beset us and enjoy Christian fellowship and the means God has appointed for us to grow in holiness. There is a struggle over our time. Those who can control our time can really control the people that we become. We're shaped by the way we spend our time. So it's important for us to have our calling 6 days a week, but also to rest and to worship on a special day, a sacred day, the Lord's Day, the Christian Sabbath. So there's a lot more that could be said. There's also exceptions for deeds of mercy. There's no commandment against doing good on the Lord's Day. An exception for deeds of necessity. People need to eat. People need to do normal, basic, necessary things. Hospital work, for example, still needs to go on the Lord's Day. That exception shouldn't be made so broad that it's impossible to break the fourth commandment, but we should realize that this is intended for our good, not to be a heavy burden on us. But I think if we focus on its intended meaning, to rest, to worship, to do good to others, to enjoy hospitality and feast, rejoicing in the victory God has given us, we'll realize this is a day intended for our good, a day which is worthy of delight.